So the ancient witness today is from Mark chapter 1. In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And just as he was coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens torn apart and the Spirit descending like a dove upon him. And a voice came from the heavens, "You are my beloved child, with you I am well pleased." And the Spirit immediately drove him out into the wilderness. He was in the wilderness 40 days, tested by Satan, and he was with the wild beasts, and the angels waited on him.
Sandy and I are teaming up this morning on this one, so Sandy will follow with a few words that I will start us out with. The story of Jesus being baptized on this first Sunday of Lent is told. Jesus coming and John baptizing in the Jordan, and immediately Jesus is sent into the wilderness to be tested before beginning the ministry of preaching and healing, with the eventual outcome of being nailed to a Roman cross. And it's told in Matthew and Luke's Gospels, only their versions are much more elaborate, and whereby we learn how Jesus is spiritually wrestled with Satan and being tempted to satisfy hunger by turning stones into bread, by putting God to the test, by throwing himself off a cliff to prove God's protection, and taking hold of earthly political power whereby nations would worship him. These more detailed stories, like I say, are told in Matthew and Luke, and they're rich for insight and learning, but Mark, as the earliest of the Gospels, does not give us these details. He gives us the basics, the outline from which we assume Luke and Matthew worked off of. So here are the basic operative words for this morning: beloved and wilderness. Anne Richardson, poet and liturgist, understood this when she wrote her poem, "Beloved is where we begin." So I want us to hear these words again, even though I believe I read this a while back. She says, "If you would enter into the wilderness, do not begin without a blessing. Do not leave without hearing who you are, beloved, named by the one who has traveled this path before you. Do not go without letting it echo in your ears, and if you find it is hard to let it into your heart, do not despair. That is what this journey is for. I cannot promise this blessing will free you from danger, from fear, from hunger or thirst, from the scorching of sun or the fall of the night. But I can tell you that on this path there will be help. I can tell you that on this way there will be rest. I can tell you that you will know the strange graces that come to our aid only on a road such as this, that fly to meet us bearing comfort and strength, that come alongside us for no other cause than to lean themselves toward our ear, and with this curious insistence, whisper our name, beloved, beloved, beloved. In Richardson's poem, she brings together the vital interplay of our identity and our journey. Beloved is the identity we carry, and wilderness is the journey. She challenges us with the notion that knowing who we are at our very core as beloved is vital before and during the wilderness journeys we inevitably must take. And by wilderness journeys, I mean the whole package that comes with walking through the experience of our lived lives. The joys and the losses, the hopes and the betrayals, the successes and the failures, the health and the sickness. You get the idea. It's the whole package. In our gospel story, Jesus enters into the wilderness alone. When we go into the wilderness alone, we are vulnerable. There is just us and our encounter with an environment that is much stronger and much mysterious than our small, ego-driven selves that only understand a small slice of what is happening to us and with us and around us. Some writers have equated correctly that there is not a cathedral ever built that could hold a candle to the cathedral of the wilderness. Using wilderness as a metaphor, we might contrast that with the noise and the competition and the chaos of the city. And again, I'm using city metaphorically. All that cacophony and noise and involvement and distraction that we have in our life. The wilderness is both beautiful and frightening. The wilderness is a place of wonder, a place of amazing sights and discoveries, a place of solitude and quiet, a place of spiritual encounter and growth. But again, it's a place of vulnerability, a place in the dark, especially in the dark. If you might imagine yourself in a sleeping bag at night, alone, some wilderness, there's plenty places we could go around here. And you may hear the sudden screaming of a mountain lion or the distant howling of wolves from multiple directions, maybe getting louder. So there is both wonder and fear should such a thing be experienced. That's vulnerability. That's the place of testing. That's the place of growth. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Psalm 23 is the most popular and well-known in biblical literature. And whether one is religious or not, a vast number of people resonate with these words. And why? Because it captures the very human condition we all share, which is one of vulnerability. And without knowing who we are as beloved by God, who is always near, always present, always claiming us, our vulnerability is intolerable. As I think of some of the most ridiculously and twisted and dangerous people with political power today, virtually all of them men, mind you, though women carry this capacity. I think of Putin, Trump, Netanyahu, Kim Jong-il, or Kim Jong-un, I guess it is. Many others, certainly of lesser notoriety. They're just human beings, vulnerable, subject to the same mortal destiny of all of us. Yet they wield power or seek power in the most destructive of ways. And I think it betrays a deep, deep fear of their own mortality, which is at the core of our vulnerability. And why are they so frightened of their own vulnerability? Because they don't have their identity grounded, I think, in their own belovedness. Not that they are not beloved, but that they don't know themselves as beloved. Beloved mortals who will soon enough be gone. The true test of knowing you are loved is that you are capable of sacrifice and service oriented toward the love of others. And that's what Jesus came to show us. I titled this sermon, Ready or Not, because ready or not, we will have wilderness experiences. We will always, as the conditions of being alive have these situations of fragility and vulnerability. These are what my friend describes as another blank growth experience. But you had to think in. I can't say that word. Another growth experience. But there is the voluntary wilderness experiences too. The one we read in our gospel lesson today. These are the intentional experiences of prayer and retreat. These are the wilderness experiences of the monastics, those who for a time enter into the wilderness of solitude. I was sitting down the other day with a number of our members, the musicians and the liturgists who helped plan for the following weeks of worship. And I knew that Sandy Evenson had recently taken a week-long silent retreat. This is an example of voluntary wilderness, a place one intentionally goes to enter into the wilderness of silence. It's a place of encounter, a place that requires courage and willingness and listening and patience. And in that place where one puts themselves into the space where one can separate the noise and simply say, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." And so I asked Sandy if she could share with us a little bit about her experience with that. Yes.
So a couple of weeks ago, I took the opportunity to participate in a silent retreat at St. Gertrude's Monastery in Cottonwood, Idaho. It was called Come to the Quiet. Come to the Quiet. A week away from the news, email, and humans seemed necessary after a time of, to quote Galadriel, sorrow and much toil. For the first time, I really felt retired, and I wanted to know what God was calling me to do next. I am a privileged white woman with a lot of options. I packed all black clothes so I wouldn't have to think about what to wear. So you know how serious I was about this endeavor. I also packed 3 books, 2 journals, and a knitting project. The monastery offers a labyrinth, hiking trails, a museum, and 3 services a day in their lovely chapel. My idea was to gain enlightenment through study, journaling, and physical activity and worship. I didn't understand the assignment. Books and journals in hand, I met with my spiritual advisor, Sister Lillian, who is 85 years old and the soul of wisdom. She lit a candle to acknowledge who is in charge. God, obviously. She asked about my goals for the week, eyeing my stack of books. She gently explained that some study is fine. Inspiration through the written word is certainly a path to God, but the goal is not just to work in silence. The idea is to go into that quiet place to hear God speaking. God, your heart, the universe, however you understand that ineffable source. I put the books and the journals and the hiking boots away. My room had a glider and a huge window facing east. I sat myself down and contemplated the Camas Prairie in silence, watching the sun's reflection on the clouds, the wind in the trees, and a squirrel scampering in and out of the shrubbery until the only evidence of him was the shadow of his tail. No cell phone, no Wordle, no Angeli in the afternoon on Northwest Public Broadcasting. I continued to rock in silence. I started to understand that there were issues I needed to clean up in my head and in my heart. I really didn't want to do that. I came to think about my options. I didn't want emotions. I wanted peace. And then I heard a tranquil voice tell me, "Don't be afraid." I went still. Did that really happen? It's not like I heard a real voice. I wasn't being told to rally the French troops at the siege of Orléans like Joan of Arc. I was in the quiet stillness of the presence of God. Now I understood the assignment, to come to the quiet. The quiet is a sacred space. St. Gertrude strives to protect this sacred space for those in it. I'm quite sure the rooms are soundproofed. We are self-conscious of our squeaky shoes. Meals are in silence. The 6 of us on the retreat had our own dining room where we ate in silence, not even looking at each other. Any engagement might break the conversation someone was having with God. One notable exception was when Sister Kay bent into my ear and whispered, "I'm sorry to break your silence, but there is chocolate birthday cake in the refectory." So I came to understand that there is a difference between not talking and being in the quiet. You will not be surprised that knitting became a conduit to the quiet. Rocking, knitting, listening, dropping my knitting into my lap from time to ponder what had just come into my mind. I was genuinely in a separate space. Something like meditation, but not really. Over the course of those first days, as I understood some of the issues I was going to have to bring to God, hallelujah, I quailed. In that tranquil space, I heard, "You are not alone." Gary has often asked us to think about the wilderness. What is the wilderness? A seemingly empty space like the Antarctic or the dense forest primeval, a place without evidence of other people, a place that needs to be tamed, a place of opportunity or exploration, a place of adventure or a place of fear, the unknown. And Gary also asks us, when confronted with a wilderness, what skills, talents, and wisdom do we bring to that challenge? My answer is that sometimes the wilderness is a place of fear. And what I now bring to the challenge is my true knowledge that God is with me and to not be afraid. By the end of the week, after no hikes, no labyrinth, no thrice daily worship, no study, no museum, no journaling, only rocking, knitting, and listening, I was enlightened. What was God calling me to do next? To be. Don't make any big plans. Don't start any big projects. Don't volunteer or create obligations. Just be Sandy. After a lifetime of living up to what I thought other people expected of me, after trying to live up to my own expectations, to be a good girl, to get things done, to do more, I am free. When I am called to the next thing, I will know it. It will come to me. God will hand it to me. In a way, this too is a wilderness, a new way of being Sandy. And it's going to be okay, because I won't be alone, and I am not afraid. Amen.